Okay, good afternoon. We're here for 5-Minute Friday with Dr. Aaron Thompson, President of the Council on Postsecondary Education. Aaron, thanks for joining us this afternoon to talk a little bit about higher education in the state. You released this week a letter to graduates that's been picked up all across the state, and my guess is maybe even nationally some.
It has been.
Tell us a little bit about that letter to graduates and what you hope graduates take away.
Well, thank you, Brigitte, for inviting me to 5-Minute Friday. I watch it every week. I look forward to it. What a good information pool for many of us who care about education. Well, the letter, I wanted to talk a little bit to those that have graduated, those, quote unquote, that reach the success pinnacle, that in fact they might want to go on or go into the workforce, and wanted to assure them that education they got in Kentucky is an education that's worth it. You know, I'm talking about exactly the value of education, and one of the things that I'm talking about across the state is why higher education matters. I mean, there's a feeling among many in the state and nationally that college isn't worth it or isn't needed. And my letter to these graduates was saying it is worth it and it is needed, and in fact, welcome to a pool of what I call economic developers, those that are going into the workforce to help us to do the things that we need to do to expand this knowledge base about the value of higher education.
And that's not just a 4-year education. It's not just traditional post-secondary as we so often think about it. It's about credentials and other degrees as well, correct?
It is, and this is the misnomer, I think, that's out there. If you go and get a certificate or a credential or a diploma for a trade school or for technical degrees or a technical certificate, that's post-secondary education. That's college. And there's a belief that college really is a 4-year degree. And we hear this often that, not everybody needs to go to college. Well, that's not true. As you've seen in the data we were putting out, that it is a need for everybody to get a post-secondary credential that matters. It doesn't have to be a 4-year degree, but it has to be something beyond high school. So yes.
Post-secondary school, high school, so continuing learning after high school.
Well, it is. And, it's higher education, right? It's not necessarily higher education at the 4-year level, but it is higher education. And I represent all of higher education, whether it's a 1-year certificate or a 4-year or a PhD in the state. So that's the message that we're needing to get out, because we have many folk that believe, students that are traditional age coming out of high school may not want to go to a 4-year institution, but obviously could see and should see the value of getting some post-secondary credential. And one, obviously want to be clear on this, not just any post-secondary credential, but one that matters, one that will help them to have a sustainable income for themselves and their families.
CPE just released progress on the strategic plan, and in that strategic plan there's a marker for the number of degrees that we'll need in a very short period of time.
Right.
What is that marker and how close are we?
Well, we look at it as an attainment level. We need to have about 60% of our population with a post-secondary credential of some sort. And that needs to be a good mix. It needs to be a mix of 2-year degrees, 1-year certificates, and 4-year degrees, and PhDs and professional degrees, law degrees, medical degrees, for us to have the kind of sustainable future, if you will, in the state that we need. Higher education is directly tied to a great economic development system. So my argument is clear. You have to have a good higher education system to have a great economic development system. So we will need that in order to participate globally as well as nationally by 2030. So, and we're doing well, by the way. I'm happy to say we needed about a 1.7% growth per year, and this past year we've seen about 2.3% growth. And so we're on line, but the real issue is we're having to slow down because of the lack of what I consider to be good investment in higher education. So I'm pushing heavily that the states start reinvesting in the future of our young people.
So you're coming off of a listening tour around the state, and that listening tour will pick up again in the fall. But what have you learned to date as you've listened to communities, students, families?
Yeah, and that's one of the great things I like about your Groundswell initiatives. It is getting people involved at the grassroots level. It's getting this groundswell of what I call energy around that everybody needs a good education, whether it's early childhood or post-secondary. What I'm learning on my listening tour so far, and I'm very privileged to have done a significant amount so far, and we'll pick it up again in the fall, do many more around the state. I'm learning that, first of all, people are worried about whether or not they can afford to go to college. They're worried that college is getting too expensive. So the affordability issue is real. And even if it may be a perception that they can't go because they don't have all the information they need to have, or there is a reality that they can't go because they just don't have enough money to not only pay for the tuition but also all the other things that comes with it. So we're going to have
board and food,
room and board,
and
food,
auto insurance,
just regular living stuff that many of us take for granted because we have a job from a good post-secondary education that allows us to do that. So I'm learning that we have to really work hard on affordability, and we have to talk about it. We need not to shy away from this. And one of the ways that we can do that is find better mechanisms to get people in, get them through at a lower cost. But a big way of doing it is to have more dollars put in from the state. I mean, now I think the state is covering about 31% of the total needs of a person in the state going to a public institution. And in 1999, the state was covering 70% of that need. So we have to switch that around. So affordability is one of the things we're hearing.
And we need so many more people educated at that level.
We have to. And to do that, we're going to have to get some of our traditional age population, which is about 53.3% that's graduating from high school, going on to college. We have to increase that. But we have almost 1 million adults that need to return into post-secondary education to get a credential that will help them to get where they need to go in life. So we have to do that. And we're going to even have to, in all honesty, transport people into the state that will stay in the state to add to this. So yes, so that's one of the things we're learning. The second thing is this misperception of what college is. Many people say, well, I don't think I can go to college. Why? I don't want to spend 4 years in college, or I don't think I'm prepared to do it, and so on. So there's a perception of preparedness, true enough. And we're going to have to work with all of public education. So I appreciate what you guys are doing to talk about how do we have a great education system to do that. But the second thing, and I think it's important, that many people don't know what college is. They don't think of getting a degree in a technical field, plumbing, electrician, welding. That is college, but it is. And so a part of what I'm going around even talking about higher education and why higher education is for them, even though they think that it may not be for them. But I get the chance to talk to business and industry about how they can get engaged with us on the front end. And they're really anxious, by the way, talking to traditional age population students, adult students, college students, high school students. I'm having a good time, Bridget.
I attended the listening tour at Kentucky State University, and I was impressed with how many students were in the audience and what you were hearing from students. So they feel this issue, the perception, the affordability. They understand, many of them, of course, if they're attending the listening tour event, they understand the importance. And they're expressing some frustration at times to you.
They are, and that's why we need to be listening to people where the rubber meets the road. Mm-hmm. And not just listening to ourselves. I mean, I think we're good people to listen to, true enough. But we have to get at that grassroots level. We have to hear from those populations that we argue that we serve and find out how well are we serving them, and that's important.
How are we doing with respect to investment in post-secondary relative to other states, surrounding states?
That's a great question. We're one of the few states that hasn't started reinvesting in the last 11 years. We're at the bottom in new investment. As a matter of fact, we've had major cuts in the last 11 years. And many states that are seeing prosperity at the level they need to see, not just for now, not just for filling the jobs we have open now, but for preparing for the future, have started reinvesting. And and they have been for a few years. So my hope is that Kentucky can get some of the other things they need out of the way done, and know that higher education is really a solution to a lot of the problems that we're feeding with the dollars that we have to spare. So the idea of building this public need, understanding, and even holding us accountable for living up to that, I think, is exactly what we have to do. What
progress
you guys are
and
doing
quality.
with Groundswell. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So higher education matters for economic development and, in the words of the Pritchard Committee, for a path to a larger life for citizens in our state.
Yeah, it's not just about quantity, it's about quality. It is about the idea that we have better health, we have better engagement, we have better social lives, we have better interaction with people, better civic processes within our local and state and national communities. Higher education is just good. I mean, good education is good.
Period.
Yes, period.
Right?
Yes.
About a month ago, the Pritchard Committee launched the Groundswell initiative, which you know a little bit about. It's an effort to engage families and communities in better schools, better education, early childhood through post-secondary. How can the Groundswell initiative benefit what you want to accomplish?
You know, actually, it may not be the classic answer you think I'm going to give. First of all, I love this Groundswell initiative. As
It's
I've
a
told
catchy
you.
phrase.
It's not just a
Catchy name.
catchy phrase. It's a catchy happening, and I see it as a movement as much as it is an initiative. And what I feel is that if you focus on an entirety of our educational system, and people ask me all the time, I think you may have even heard me say, that if you want a good higher education system, let's invest in early childhood. You know, so this initiative goes to building a groundswell, like I said, I love the name, about having people understand the value of that. And seeing Pritchard engaged at this level, I have to tell you, I'm excited about. It helps me in that it allows me to talk about what we need to do from early childhood and even before they come out of parents' homes. So it's great that you're getting families in this conversation, right? And how that leads to an understanding that transitions can actually be mitigated, hard transitions, I mean, into a way of having people at a very young age think about the value of education. And so when we get them in post-secondary, not only they're academically ready, they're socially, emotionally ready, and they're culturally ready. Because one of the things that we have to do, in which I think the Groundswell can really help us to do it, is to help people to understand this equity issue. It's about not just having certain groups that are ready, socially, emotionally, culturally, and academically, but all groups. And that, in fact, it has to be a part of the conversations we have at the communal level, at the familial level, at the institutional level, and help the student, him or herself, know internally.
So it is a call for all of us to own our progress, to own our truth, own our progress, and commit to the unique responses that need to happen at the local level to really support our young people, and for that matter, adults, in pursuing increasing levels of education that support them, their families, and their community. So we're excited and pleased that you see it as a benefit for your work, and look forward to working with you, ensuring that folks across the state see that higher education matters, and that we move forward toward that ultimate attainment mark that you're after from a strategic plan standpoint, and that we're after from the standpoint of, yes, post-secondary, but also K-12 and early childhood.
And I appreciate your focus on the entirety of the system and post-secondary, because it just doesn't stop with high school. And yes, absolutely. And thank you for all that you and Pritchard are doing that's out there. Just know that we at the Council on Post-Secondary Education and all of higher education are there to be a part of this groundswell.
Thank you so much. We'll be updating you on President Thompson's future listening tour events through the Pritchard Committee update. If you haven't joined the Groundswell initiative yet, please do so on our website, and you'll begin receiving all the information that we get out about events like President Thompson's and other events across the state. Thank you.